Are you confused about writing? Do you not know where to start or even how to finish? Do you love writing so much that it burns deep in your soul, but you still don't know how to meet your goals? Are you looking for a little inspiration that will take you on a writer's vacation? Then let us all write together. Let us all write our way. Hello everyone, welcome to Write Our Way. I'm your host Patrick Starks, and today we're going to talk about distinction between characters. For the many stories that we write, I know that it can sometimes be challenging to make our characters sound different to our readers. In fact, this can be one of the toughest challenges for a writer. However, there's no need to worry because we're going to cover that in this episode of the podcast. Let's think about it for a moment. Let's take some of our characters that we may currently have right now and let's put them in a situation where they're like in a courtroom. They got to give an alibi to the jury, and basically we need to make a distinction between how each character would sound. How would they deliver this speech to the jury? Now, of course, this can all vary depending on who exactly our character is. A lot of the times we sometimes voice out or express our emotions through what we've experienced or the title we may hold in life. So our characters are going to be no different. For example, let's take a pastor and a boxer. There's been a freak accident they had on the road. Someone died, and now they have to give their case to why they're innocent. Now again, when creating the speeches for these two, if you're finding that they sound the same, then you probably need to go back and fix something. Something is not quite clicking, and you might even need to exaggerate or elaborate more on their position. Again, the title that they may hold, which is the pastor. He holds the title of a pastor, and the boxer holds the title of being a boxer. And so you want to express that through their emotions when they're speaking. And again, everyone, if you still can't figure it out, again, like I always talk about, writers, we have to be researchers too. So don't be afraid to go on YouTube or look at some videos on boxers giving interviews or pastors talking. You really need to get an understanding of the lingo and what they typically talk about or how they pronounce things and whatnot, so that you can portray this in their speech when writing it. Now, if you're wondering, everyone, like the whole point of this exercise is to, again, make sure that we're making distinction between characters. I mean, I know a lot of times in a podcast I talk about the different environments and I talk about the hero's journey and the villain's journey, but I don't really talk about the distinction between the two, the distinction between the characters that they meet down their pathway. And having these distinctions are very vital, everyone, for your stories, because again, we want to show our audience that they are in a world where you have multiple personalities going on. You don't want to bring them into the world where everyone sounds the same, because then it's not very realistic, which we've also talked about before, is realism within our stories. And that's not quite close to reality if we have everyone sound the same. Now, there are people that kind of mimic other people in life, like if they hang around them enough, they start to sound like them, but that's not the case. What I mean is every character is portraying the same emotion. Like if somebody's miserable, every character in the story is miserable, and that just doesn't work out. You need to have some differences between everyone. You can have a happy person, you can have a funny person, you can have a very sarcastic person, or you can have a very mean person. You get the picture. You're going to have multiple emotions going on in the story, and that's what it's all about. And sometimes, like, when we meet people, they're going to have multiple emotions. They're going to have multiple things going on in their lives that make their emotions shift, and that as well is going to be needed in the story, because we don't also want our characters to be so linear where they're just happy the whole damn time. It's like if some traumatic scene is going on in the story, you can't have the main character be happy-go-lucky the whole time. It wouldn't even make sense. So I'm sure you guys already know that, but I'm just stating the obvious here. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, how does one make those distinctions? It's got to be more than just portraying different emotions, right? Is there some type of sign that signifies us that this person is who he or she is? I'm sure you all know, like for the pastor, I think that one's pretty straightforward. I mean, they're definitely going to have some religious views. So as they're talking, as they're giving their alibi, they're going to use a lot of religion to plead why they are so innocent. So the pastor, in my opinion, will probably come off a little bit more peaceful. That's just what I assume they would want to portray to show some innocence to the jury. However, for the boxer, it's probably going to be a lot more different. The boxer, I would assume, would come off a little bit more pushy, a little aggressive, but I mean, I wouldn't say they would be over-exaggeratively aggressive, but they would definitely have a little bit more push in their voice versus the pastor. They're going to be a little bit more like, what the hell are you guys talking about? Like, I'd never do this type of thing. His verbiage is probably going to be a little bit more like swearing. Curse words are assumed to be aggressive words, so boxer, I know for sure, will do that, especially if they feel backed into a corner where they feel like everyone is kind of leaning toward, oh, this guy's definitely guilty. They're definitely going to get a little bit more aggressive. And again, everyone, like I said before, this is what you don't want. You don't want to have the pastor, or let's say you don't want to have the boxer seem as peaceful as the pastor. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some very mellow fighters that I've seen, that I've met, but again, stereotypically, what most people are going to assume is the boxer is going to be more aggressive. But I mean, if you did want to portray the boxer as peaceful, like the passer, and still have this aggressiveness, you could do like sarcasm. You could have him be very subtle aggressive, which would also work. So it could be a different version of peacefulness. And for these speeches, I think it's very important for a writer to really dive deep into the hearts of these characters. I think it's not talked about a lot from writers, but this sense of emotion, right? Like, it's more than just saying words and being fancy with your words or having this huge vocabulary and knowledge of words. You can be the greatest wordsmith in the world, but if you don't know how to portray those words emotionally, then it's just not going to work. So you got to think about the boxer, how they might feel, what they've gone through in their past. They might have went through a rough past and they've been trying their hardest to pick themselves up and better themselves, and now this happens. Or the pastor might have always had everything good for them. They've always been, or have always avoided trouble and stayed out of trouble, and now they have something that they have that could be a record of them screwing up for once in their life, and they don't want that. And so you have to portray that emotionally and kind of give that heartfelt emotion to the audience. The emotion should be so deep that the audience, the readers, feel for both characters. You don't just feel for, because if they're only feeling for one, then again, there's an emotion lacking in one of the characters that you're not really exaggerating enough. Because every book that I've read, every great story that I've read, every character in that story has been very emotional. Whether they were good or bad, I kind of understood why they were the way they were. And so that's what you want to do as a writer. You want to make sure your characters are being, understood. And I think that, morally, that can go far in life, right? I think everyone can be a little bit understood, show a little sympathy for each other and understand, why we are who we are, why we have our emotions, why we have our mood swings and whatnot. So when you're writing stories or you're making these distinctions between characters, don't leave anybody out, make sure that you're putting just as much emotion into the villain as much as you're putting into the hero. And same goes for the supporting characters, put just as much emotion into the side characters as you're doing the main characters. No one should be left out, because at the end of the day, we all have a story to tell, right? Everyone has a story to tell. So just make sure, again, when you're writing these speeches to not forget that. Now, I know a few of you are thinking that you should be able to tell your distinctions between just describing the characters, right? Like how they look, what kind of clothes they're wearing. But again, it's so much more than that, everyone. Sure, it's easy to describe like what they're wearing, but if their emotions and their voice doesn't match their look, then it comes off a bit odd, you know? Then again, everyone, don't let me stop you, because this oddness, in fact, can actually be really good for stories. I know, like, when I watch anime, they have so many characters that they have like these very unique looks, but their voice does not match the look. And when done right, it can be gold. It can be really great for a story. In fact, it can be quite entertaining. So I'd say if you do feel like you want to do that, I'd say go for it. But just make sure you're elaborating on that emotion of the character's voice. Feel free, like they can look however they want to look, and their voice can be completely opposite. Just make sure that you're expressing that emotion throughout your characters. And again, not just the main characters, through all your characters. Make every character meaningful. If there's any advice I can give to any writer that I've learned down the road, is make every character as compelling as the next, because that's what's going to make people turn page to page. That's what's going to make your story so much more entertaining to your readers. You know, think about when we watch Marvel films or DC films, every character you're not going to like. But we have to admit that each one of those characters are going to be pretty entertaining regardless of how we feel about them. But all in all, guys, I hope that this exercise was very helpful for you. I know it is for me. I always have to kind of do these exercises to keep my butt in line so that I'm not starting to be a sloppy writer. I know sometimes we can get lazy when we write so many stories. We start to kind of slack off on the fine details of what makes a great story. And so I definitely wanted to bring this to everyone's attention and kind of elaborate on the distinction about how we make our characters sound in our stories and how our readers view them. And as always, guys, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm going to say it. I always love speaking with you guys about these topics. This is why podcast started. Right Our Way Season 2. We're still going strong, and I hope that you guys continue sticking around and keep listening to the tips that I have to give on writing and some of the discussions we have about writing, because at the end of the day, we're all still growing as writers. I think everyone in the world can be storytellers. It's just a matter of how much do you want to learn about it, you know, how much research do you want to do. Yeah. But let me quit rambling off, guys. You know it. We come with y'all again. Imagine, my friends. And stay tuned for the next episode. And don't forget to leave me a nice review. I'd love to hear from you guys and hear how you liking the podcast. And yeah, I just want to keep going for you guys. So just love your support on that. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. All right. See you later.